Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Sam Zagar. Of course, we're doing another YouTube reading, and we have a very small intake form today, so let's just get the body graph up on the screen. We have a 1-3 Splenic Projector, channel of Abstraction, and channel of Surrender. 3 left arrows, but they gave me an 11:05 birth time. I don't know how accurate that will be. Anything that ends on a 5 or a 0, I'm like, I don't know. So a little bit of like, little grain of salt there. And can anything change at the tonal level? Third tone, strategic mind. If they were born a little bit later, we could have flipped to a fourth tone, but we'd have to go through multiple colors. I'm pretty comfortable with what this body graph is. We're going to say that this is 3 left variables and a peripheral view. Okay, let's see what their questions, well, I guess they're my questions. Let's see what their answers are. Are you having a problem you need help with? No, thankfully. Great. What's your biggest question then? I would like to know what you think the most key elements in my chart are and how I can optimize these, or minimize if it's a weakness. Interesting they said weakness. I'm like, that language is... I'm not surprised I got that kind of language from an ego that's that defined. What else are you curious about? Channel of Surrender and Abstraction. Okay, with knack for marketing and explaining, yet having to wait for the invitation. Okay. Anything else you need me to know? I'm leaving it all open to you and what comes through in the moment. Very splenic of you. I like this, very existential. Okay. What comes up for me? Really, the only thing that they actually asked me about was how am I supposed to use my channel of surrender and my channel of abstraction while waiting for an invitation? Okay, so let's loosely talk about what these channels are, the differences between them. What does it actually feel like for this person to have this definition? If I look at the channel of abstraction, it's all consciously defined in the personality. They know they're mental. They know they have mental definition. They also know that they have an ego because I have a channel turning on the ego and the egoic side of it is conscious. Gate 26 is consciously defined for this person. Also, though, it gets my attention that they have 26.2 twice. It is in their Mercury and Uranus. They have 26.2 twice. So the part of their ego that they're conscious of happens to be a hidden second line gift. This is what we call the effery in people's designs. It's like, here's the save. Oh, here's the fail. It's like, yeah. Yay, here's the part of you that you know about, except it's hiding a gift that you don't know about, and you have hope motivation. The reading right before this one was also hope motivation. Second tone in the brain, second tone in the environment, second color in the view, second color in the motivation. Second line in their gate 26. This person has a lot of qualities in themselves that they don't quite know how to access, know how to discern, know how to identify. And there's almost a quality of like not knowing until you know, which is typically something that we say about the individual. But with the existential qualities of the spleen and the fact that this person has taste cognition, which is a splenic cognition, and more specifically, a lymphatic cognition, they have an existential cognition that it's like, I know or I don't. Like, that's the taste or it's not the taste. It's like, no, there's no taste, or it's that's the taste. Or I taste the thing in it. Being taste cognition is very interesting because most people typically go to the style version of this. And it's not just to call it like a pop HD thing, but it's definitely way more common in the pop HD world to be like, oh, you have good taste. And like what most people think it means to say that, it's not actually, and yet they can be connected. People just aren't necessarily making the connection. So taste cognition is a mouth breather. So first off, I'm like, is this person actually mouth breathing? And it's so funny to be like, and then to be like, oh, they have hot thirst determination. So this person should be having above body temperature foods frequently, consistently, active brain. They need consistent access to calories. Otherwise they get brain dead. They get dumb. You get dumb when you don't eat enough. Now, in order for you to be smart, to maximize the potential of your brain, to nourish your brain into its greatest potential, above body temperature foods, frequently, with a taste discernment, as in, if it's not good, spit it out. But also, you don't have to put it in your mouth to know if it's good. If I bring you warm food, there's a really good chance you're going to do the instinctual thing and blow on it. Every time you blow out, you breathe in. Every time you breathe in, you taste. Every time you breathe in the air around your food, you're tasting the air around your food. And it's kind of the first level of exposing yourself to a potential toxin. Taste cognition is a lymphatic cognition where you are breathing in the air. There are potential toxins in that air that have just gone into your lungs and into your blood system, where your immune system is now responding to make antibodies to protect you against the infection that you just diagnosed. Being a splenic person and a taste cognition person and somebody who should live in a hardscape environment, wet kitchens, you're very much about immunity. You're very much about, like, can you sense the sickness? Can you taste what's off? Now let's lead that into the marketing channel of surrender. Like, we already acknowledge so many qualities about being immune, being lymphatic, being discerning, being, like, you have so much, like, really good splenic qualities to you. You got a lot of two. A lot of really good discernment and immunity. But this is also the propaganda channel. They say it's a marketing channel. Marketing meaning propaganda. And propaganda meaning, what creative material do we need to produce to support the tribe? This is a creative channel. This is the tribal creative channel. So what creative material, propaganda, do we need to make or write or produce? Gate 26 is the gate of the product. You're a second line and you're 26, so you don't know necessarily what the product is here that you're supposed to produce. And even if you did know what the product was, next year you would innovate it. And next year after that, you would innovate it again, because you're going to improve the product, because that's what this gate does. And you have a defined ego that can improve. That's good and healthy for you. But it's also meant to be good and healthy for others. What is the propaganda that you're able to create that keeps people healthy? Now, look at my life for a minute. I'm only this channel. I'm only the channel of surrender. What kind of propaganda do I make that supports the tribe in being healthy? I was so fascinated by this system, I couldn't not share about it. I couldn't not talk about it. As soon as I got my hands on the definitive book of human design, I started making content because that was a way for me to process what I was learning. I'd read about it, I'd create something from it, and creating is part of how I integrate the information. And in sharing it, I started to get recognized. I remember the questions of like, do I need an invitation to start a social media account? No, you don't. If somebody does say, hey, I think you should start one of these, this would be awesome for you, you can probably relax a little bit more that your success will be faster or more dependable. But it doesn't mean that you can't have success if you start something on your own. And so let's say, for example, what you start to do is share your perspective online. You're not saying it to anyone in particular, though. So it kind of negates the need to be invited for guidance. I need to be invited to give guidance to a person specifically. Like, I'm not going to walk up to a person and be like, you should do this. That's initiating. They didn't ask me for that. But let's say I have a body graph and I've got a person there and I'm looking at the body graph and I'm looking at the person. I'm like, that person should not be doing that. It would be wrong of me to walk up to that person and be like, hey, don't do that. It's not wrong of me to take elements of this body graph and to go make content and to talk about why somebody with elements of this body graph might experience resistance. If that person who that body graph belongs to happens to find this information and be like, whoa, this feels very relevant for me, I'm going to ask her more about that. That's one of the ways that this can happen. I don't want you to necessarily hold off on making your propaganda because you're not quite sure if you have the invitation or not. Keep your propaganda somewhat generalized in terms of what do you see? What do you see? Not what do you see for that person. What do you see? From there, you will be more recognized. And from those recognitions, you'll start to build a reputation. And from that reputation, you will be more invited and ideally compensated. You better be compensated. You got an ego that's going to be real upset if you're not. Your ego is going to be very, very mad. That's one of the ways I want you to tell whether or not your prices are actually good. Because when people start asking to work with you, you'll have a new question of, well, what are my prices supposed to be? And your prices should be set at whatever keeps your body feeling comfortable to still deliver what you promised. If you promise to deliver something, but then when you go to actually create the thing, you're just like, I don't want to be doing this. And not frustration, but like a bit of an anger quality to it. You undersold what you're about to deliver and your ego knows it, but there's a different part of you that is failing to admit or acknowledge it. Avoiding admitting or acknowledging it, not so much failing. Channel of abstraction is an interesting one because this is turning things over in the head and the ajna, trying to look for patterns, but patterns after the fact, as in something already happened, now we connect the dots. You have a small tendency to embellish stories and to maybe add in facts that don't need to be there or shouldn't have been there, never belonged there in the first place. Because when you're trying to make sense of things, you may input things that weren't actually there because it's what makes sense for the story. If you're an early primitive person and the sun rises every day, someone with the channel of logic is like the sun rises every day. There's a pattern here. The sun rises a little later every day and it goes down a little later every day and then it like goes back the other way. That would be a logical pattern. Channel of abstraction is likely to come up with a little bit of information after. They watch the sun come up every day. Sun comes up every day. Sun comes up every day. And at the end of every day, they ask themselves, how did the sun come up? How did it actually get there? And for all they know, a raven carried it in a basket into the sky every morning before they woke up. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's not wrong and it's not right. And it could totally make sense. But it could also not make sense. Logic makes more sense because there are predictable logical patterns. Abstraction doesn't make as much sense because you're trying to sort something out after the fact. You're looking back at something. My concern here is that this person might have something beautiful to create, but do they over embellish it a little bit too much? That's one of my things, but I'm also not feeling that much there, so I'm not thinking that's that too big of a concern. Are you stopping yourself from creating things because you're uncomfortable with like a lack of certainty? Or is it hard for you to create something because somebody might try and discredit you or say that you're wrong? Are you afraid to create something because they're just going to say, like, that doesn't make sense. We don't understand that. What are you talking about? From your perspective, you likely see yourself as more confusing to other people than you actually are because you're so aware of your channel of abstraction. You're not as aware of your channel of surrender because it's half unconscious. But you are very much a splenic being and an ego being. I have quite a few activations here. You also have quite a few activations in the solar plexus and in the root center. So from the not self-amplified quality, are you thinking that you just have too much to do, you got a list done, you got a pressure done, but you're not quite sure what thing to pick? Between your head and your root, are you kind of like, the world is fucking full of possibilities. The world is full of possibilities. Which one do I pick? Possibility is right, though. If you're like, the world is so full of possibility, I need an invitation to know specifically which one I should focus on or start on. You don't know what to focus on. Receptive. Well, not receptive, peripheral. The peripheral possibilities. You don't quite know which one to see or grab. Interesting here, because I'm not necessarily sussing out distraction. When I naturally go to express you in the correct keynote, that's very affirming for me. What could get you to transfer and distract? What could get you to become distracted on probability and then fixate, guilt, fix-it motivation? You're supposed to be hope and possibility and hope and possibility. But does anything happen to you where it's like, probably we should, probably we should? Who can guilt you? All right. I think I'm good there. I always like ending on a smile. That feels good. All right, on to the next one.